Poilievre says Trudeau escaped criminal charges and the RCMP's leadership is despicable, with their response proving him right. Pierre Poilievre said what millions of Canadians have long suspected, but few in power will admit, that Justin Trudeau has been shielded from criminal accountability, and the RCMP's leadership now serves as a political arm of the Liberal Party. When RCMP Commissioner Mike Doom was asked about Poilievre's criticisms, his dismissive response, "I think we've talked about the SNC Lavalin quite a lot under the previous government," proved Poilievre's point. Trudeau's record speaks for itself, accepting a luxury vacation from the Aga Khan, pressuring the Attorney General to drop criminal charges against SNC Lavalin, and repeatedly violating ethics laws without consequence. The RCMP refused to act, protecting the powerful instead of the public. Many of the same insiders from those scandals, including Gerald Butts, who worked with Mark Carney's wife at Eurasia Group, remain in control. It's the same club, the same corruption, and as George Carlin said, you ain't in it. So does this reveal a deeper problem that Canada's political class operates above the law?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious they do, right? But what political class doesn't?
It's true.
Right? Like this is sort of become standard across the West and I think the East and I think just kind of everywhere now. And you're seeing some uprising in the East and in other parts of the world in less stable nations. You know, a lot of the Gen Z kids are throwing governments over right now in places like Madagascar. I get it. They're sick of how far out of whack things have become. Right now, here, totally different landscape, but it's basically the same principle. They're just better at covering it up. You know, it very much is protect your own. And what I see in government today is they're using more of our tax dollars to increase the size of government in almost every department because there's strength in numbers, right? Like, I think it's over 20%, you might know the number better than me. I actually think it's like 26 or 27% of Canadians are now involved in the workforce, are now a part of some government organization in some way or another. And it was like under 10% about 15, 20 years ago. Now there's a sweet spot and we're well over it, right? So, but all I'm saying is this. If everybody's getting paid, everybody's on your side, right? And then they're going to continue to vote for you, and then you continue to maintain power. That's exactly what this is. Now, if you are the prime minister or president of a country, and you think about how you maintain control, well, your largest national police force, the RCMP or the FBI, if you're thinking about America, they're one of the first organizations you need to hijack, in a sense, hijack, quote unquote, because if you don't, they're the ones that actually have the power to take you down. They're like your first line of defense. If you think about it in terms of sort of a linear path to get to the prime minister, get to these people, you can have local police, you can have provincial police, you can have all these different organizations have problems with the prime minister, but it's going to work its way up the chain. It's going to stop at the RCMP, very much like things would stop with the FBI. Now, I understand the judicial system will get involved in some capacity. Basically, the RCMP gets to operate as like this buffer zone. So as long as they're on your side, which clearly they are, there's really no way to get to the guy, right? Guy, girl, whoever it may be. So this is the system we have. We don't have a government that really works for the people. I think that's very, very clear. Especially, you look at Trudeau's track record. You and I used to joke that every week he would just outdo himself with a new scandal. Every week there was something new. And you go, how is this guy so impenetrable? How, it's Teflon Trudeau. This was wild. So he, to me, really proved how corrupt the government is. And what was interesting is through his tenure, he did it in front of the curtain instead of behind the curtain. And I'm not sure if that's because he's brazen and egotistical or just a dumbass. Either way, the system that's in place is very effective. Now, when you think about, okay, well, why would they protect Trudeau? It's like, well, I say this all the time about policy. You can implement a piece of policy or a piece of legislation that I go, oh, that's very dangerous. That language is loose and that can be weaponized against the people. And then, you'll get people justifying it. Well, I'm a part of the Liberal Party and it's the Liberal Party doing it, so it's super cool. No, it's good. We can suppress your voices. Well, eventually there's going to be someone else in power and they're going to use that policy against you. It's like no matter what, the shoe always ends up on the other foot because the people in power don't care about you. And eventually there's going to be someone in power that is against your ideology in some capacity. So it works kind of the same way here. Yes, Trudeau's an idiot. Yes, we could all see him getting taken down. Yes, he escaped criminal charges. Yes. But he's also the idiot that did in front of the curtain, so we got to see it. However, the system is more important than the individual. So it's more important that the RCMP protects the prime minister and that system stays in place so that the next prime minister comes in and kind of operates in that same landscape because they're not really as dumb as Trudeau, right? So that's all this is. We just got to see behind the curtain. That's what this really is.
I think this is how it's always been, and maybe this is why this kind of stuff doesn't stress me out as much as, say, some people, which I think it's valid to be stressed out about this kind of stuff,
Sure.
or upset or angry. However, with an accurate historical view, you do realize that most regimes throughout all of history have operated this way, that there is corruption. However, so I'm not an idealist in the sense where I think you can live in a world where there's no corruption or anything like this happening. However, I think there's an acceptable level. Like, if you were, let's say, doing a construction project and in your budget, you're like, okay, I probably know I need 5% of this to kind of just go towards
the big guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can probably accept that and move on. That's not a big enough issue for me to dedicate my life to exposing you people.
Yes.
However, when that corruption level, and these are kind of arbitrary numbers, but when that corruption level reaches 20, 30, 40%, like we see within the Green Slush Fund,
Sure.
where over 30% of the $1 billion fund was getting put into liberal affiliated firms, then now this is an issue, because now no system can survive with that level of corruption. Essentially, the parasite nature of it is too much for the host to survive. And so that's where my issue comes in, is going, we've crossed a line as to what's acceptable in this space.
So let me ask you a question then. Use the example of, okay, I'm doing a construction project and I'm coughing up 5% to the big guy. Got it. So, but then you made reference to the Green Slush Fund, which is a fund made with tax dollars that they then basically steal, pay to their buddies, corruption, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think SNC-Lavalin, who's now operating under a different name and still getting billions of dollars of Canadian tax dollars, just to keep everybody up to date, I don't think they're handing over any more than 5 to 10% still. I think what we saw was how bad the corruption was once the tax dollars are sort of fungible within these different funds. I think that, like I say all the time, I think government spending efficiency is 20%. I think half of it probably goes to corruption. The other half of it goes to bureaucracy. So half of the 80 rather, you know what I mean? So when you think about that, I don't think that's really changed much. I think we just got to see it.
Yeah, maybe. And that's part of my whole shtick, I guess, here with this as well, is just being like, Orwell once said, all tyrannies rule through fraud and force. And once the fraud is exposed, then they have to rely exclusively on force.
Right.
I want to expose the fraud. Let's see if you guys, I don't think a lot of these people have the balls to go through with the force aspect. I think there is some definitely in those circles, but it's like, all right, like at this point, the fraud is too much. It's too much. It needs to be exposed.
I agree.
We need to rip back that curtain, and either we have a reckoning where people actually go to jail, or they clamp down and the illusion is gone.
I agree with you, but what have you actually seen? You've seen the clampdown. You're just seeing it in a different way. So they're paying $2.3 billion annually to control the media. They're implementing a censorship apparatus that is as ridiculous as anything I've seen in the West once it's completely implemented. Like, it's worse than the UK if they implement every piece of policy as it currently stands in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing the RCMP just protect the Prime Minister, which, like you said, they've been doing for decades, but you're seeing it, and it's more obvious. They're just kind of skirting questions and doing it in broad daylight. So, and there's lots of other policy and lots of other things that are happening. But what I'm basically saying is there are people like us that are exposing the corruption. And rather than a reckoning, what we're getting is a clampdown. It's just they're doing everything they can to avoid a physical clampdown first, because that's kind of the thing with democracy, right? Like in the way that it operates in Canada or in much of the West. They tell you that you can vote your way out of these problems. But the reality is they've sort of hijacked the democratic system. So you can't really vote your way out of it, but that's the tool that they give you.
Yes and no, because, I mean, you look at, okay, you use the UK as an example. Yeah, Keir Starmer has gone full mask off, talking digital IDs to deal with the mass migration. You've got him also doing the whole speech laws stuff, 30 people getting arrested for social media posts a day kind of thing, to the point where now you look at the polling in the UK and it looks like Farage and his Reform Party are going to win in a landslide. And so
it looks that way.
Yeah.
It also looked like Poilievre was going to win in a landslide here.
It didn't look like that at all.
It did for a while.
For sure,
Quite a
but
while.
as soon as Carney came in and the whole liberal leadership changed, then people can definitely get duped.
Sure. So what would stop them from doing something similar over there?
Maybe, and hey, we'll see.
Yeah.
That's definitely that can happen. But my point is,
I'm not trying to go too far into the conspiracy side. I apologize. I'm just saying I'm looking at what's happened.
No. But yeah, that's a separate conversation. But my point is that if you can expose the fraud and get them to go full mask off, then I do think the majority of the population goes, wait, what the hell at that point? And then starts going, okay, I'm ready to pivot. You'll still get the diehard liberals that will sit there and go elbows up. And, even though they've been told to put their elbows down now.
No more elbows. Yeah.
They'll still do that. But this is what I think a lot of people forget as well, is that the masses don't engage in these conversations all that much. So like when you go on Twitter and you're seeing people's political takes and you see these crazy liberals and stuff, it's like, that's not really an accurate representation of the normal person.
I totally agree with you. However, my concern is what we just talked about is that they control the censorship apparatus and they control the media. So in controlling those two things, then you can stop independent voices from spreading the words that they want to try to expose you, and you can continue to feed the majority of Canadians or the majority of people in the UK or the US the propaganda. So that's the issue I have. 90% of our news consumed comes from a subsidized source. So when you think about that in Canada, how do you change people's minds? I was chatting with an old guy on the street the other day. I was walking the dog and he was talking. He's like, do you want a little like a motorized Jeep for your kid? I was like, oh, actually, you know what? Like, we're kind of taking off. We're leaving for the US in the next few months, blah, blah, blah. Thanks. But no, I'm not trying to pick up anything else or buy anything else that I got to then move with me. Right. So he's like, oh, you're going to go down to the States. Why would you do that? It's an old Italian guy. So he's one of my people. So he's like, oh, Trump's a criminal and Trump's this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da and blah, blah. And so I just started asking questions. I've learned to ask more questions because people just kind of, and he was super nice. But every time I'd ask him a question, I'd be like, so why is Trump a criminal? Oh, this and this and this. I'm like, well, all those charges were dropped, and that's kind of a bunk charge. So you're talking about the capacity of running the country. What are we doing better in Canada economically that makes this a better opportunity, a better place for me and my family? He goes, yeah, I guess we do worry about that here. Yeah, we worry about the next generation. Okay, so there's more opportunity down there, right? He goes, yeah, but Trump, he's a criminal. He's a criminal. He's gonna steal Canada, make it the 51st state. I go, well, look, it's 2025. It's not going to be a kinetic war with the U.S. It's not going to happen. I said it's very unlikely. Anything like there is so much red tape in the way of that. That's rhetoric that the media is spreading. I said in reality, as an adult, you have to be able to pick your problems. And down there, I would choose those problems over these ones because I don't really see a big future here. I think it's going to be challenging for a young generation. And then he would just cycle back to Trump's a criminal. You see, they're protesting him today and da-da-da-da. I go, okay, so the propaganda works. I get he's an older guy, but still, the machine does what it does and it's effective. That's my concern.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that brings up a good point because it is hilarious. And this is just, highlighting, I guess, the double think that you see with these highly propagandized people where, Trump's a criminal. They're doing this. And then when Poilievre comes out and says that Trudeau
is literally a criminal.
This isn't even speculation. Him and his administration interfered in criminal charges for one of their preferred firms, SNC Lavalin. The Green Slush Fund, the Winnipeg lab scandal where they were allowing bioterrorism grade viruses to be shipped to a hostile nation's military program. Then so all of these kind of things, you go, there's definitely criminality going on here. But then Poilievre talks about it and all these propagandized people go, whoa, you're trying to jail your political opponents. But then not 10 seconds later, we'll sit there and be like, well, Trump's a criminal. And you're like, yeah, they were clearly trying to jail him for nonsense.
Yes.
And hey, even if it's unethical, are you telling me that, paying a woman hush money essentially is equivalent to bioterrorism grade weapons being shipped to a military? These things aren't in the same realm.
Yes, agreed.
You can't compare them. But in their mind, they just go, well, see, and that's even too when it comes to the Trump derangement syndrome in Canada, especially. you hear them point out these things about Trump, and it's just like, how are you not seeing that?
How are you not seeing this? How are you not seeing both sides? You're so hypocritical.
It's the classic. I mean, it's classic gaslighting in the sense where it's just like, oh, I'm going to try to jail you and then accuse you of trying to jail me.
Yes.
What?
This is what I mean. There's no logical thinking. Right. But anyway, yeah. So we'll see how things shake out. At the end of the day, our political class operates above the law. It's pretty clear. They've done so for a very long time. I don't know how we get a handle on it, especially considering the conversation we just had. I think it sort of is what it is, but if it helps anybody sleep at night, Carney seems to operate more behind the curtain, so at least you won't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to add to that topic, though, is this is exactly what I've been saying Poilievre needs to be doing. Not necessarily the criminal conversation or this or that, even though that's great. Put a highlight on the massive corruption that's needed to be talked about. However, controlling the conversation.
Yes.
Because when he came out and essentially swung, he caused all of the Canadian media to now be on their back foot and try to protect the establishment rather than having them on the offense in attacking him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they'll say Poilievre is being divisive, or he's trying to import mega style politics and, all of this jailing your political opponent kind of stuff that you see them say. But it's the fact that he's controlling the conversation in that one, especially in this one topic. And I think definitely needs to do more of that.